deliberately move people from where they are now to where we want them to be, to where they never expected to be, we actually have to do this deliberately, and we have to do this through structure. Now, the best speakers in the world know this. The best movie and script writers in the world know this. The best book writers, the best authors know this. If we want to move people through from where they are now to a destination that they think they want, to actually where we want to take them, then we actually have to do that deliberately. It doesn't just happen by winging it. Episode 19, where we get to unpack speaking structures. Now, as a 20-year-old and into my 30s, I never would have thought that I would be the person telling you that structure matters, but it does. And we touched on this in episode 14, that to deliberately move people from where they are now to where we want them to be, to where they never expected to be, we actually have to do this deliberately, and we have to do this through structure. Now, the best speakers in the world know this. The best movie and script writers in the world know this. The best book writers, the best authors know this. If we want to move people through from where they are now to a destination that they think they want, to actually where we want to take them, then we actually have to do that deliberately. It doesn't just happen by winging it. And this is where the rubber hits the road. This is where we actually need to understand some of those structures. Now, I believe that I am like so many people listening to this right now. I came from a place where I didn't think structure was necessary. I thought structure would actually halt my creativity. And whilst I could walk you through my experience, there's a story from Donald Miller, who is the author of Building a Story Brand, that I wanted to share with you, because it's really, really important, and it really demonstrates exactly why we need structure and instruction. So he tells a story about going to work with one of the biggest advertising and media agencies in Chicago, and they were huge. And some of the resistance he got because he wanted to take them through a structure. Some of the resistance that he got from them was, but you don't understand, we're creatives. We are known for our creativity. We don't want to be boxed in. We don't ever do things that are in the box. And so he just let that go, they thought. And as they came to the lunchtime break, he said to them, okay, when you get back from lunch, I'm going to meet you downstairs in the lobby. Meet me down there. And they all said, okay, great. So when they get to the lobby after lunch, he says, great. What we're going to do is I just want to let's go outside. Let's go across that pedestrian crossing up there. And when we get to the park, I'll talk to you about what we're going to do. And he continued to do these bit by bit instructions for well over an hour until he brought them back to the lobby of the building and took them upstairs for a debrief. And his words, or his debrief, his insights were, so you sit here telling me that you are highly creative, that you don't need structure, that you're about being outside the box. And they all said yes. And he said, for the last hour, you have actually followed my directions without hesitation, without really thinking about it. And this is what I want you to understand. Everybody needs structure, and everybody needs to understand the pathway they're going on. And so this is what I want you to remember as well. I know there are a lot of people in my world. They come up to me all the time and say, Jack, I love what you're doing, but I never need you because I'm really good. I just speak off the cuff. And I get that. And I get that you create an emotional response. And I get that people appreciate your insights, your intellect, and your nous, but you will never take them to a place that surprises them. You can't do that without structure. So I'm going to walk you through some of the key structures that we use. And there is also a downloadable for you to accompany this one, which actually gives you the visuals and allows you to walk through this with me. But let's start off with the main one. Let's talk keynote structures, both main stage keynote, which is professional speakers, and subject matter expert. Subject matter experts can be professional speakers, but they can also be business builders and professionals who are paid to speak. There are two very distinct differences with this. To give you a quick overview though, when we're talking keynote, is that there is some structure in there that I want you to understand. In a pure form keynote, we have stories coming in, then we come to the attention snap, which we've spoken about in an earlier episode. Then we have what we call the engine room, which is where the heavy lifting is. This is where we give the best of us. And then we have an out. So there are 4 core elements. Now, when it comes to the stories coming in a pure form keynote, stories in are around 25 to 35% of your total time. So in a 15-minute presentation, for example, that is 3 to 5 minutes. So your stories coming in at 25 to 35% of your total time, and you are in pure story mode at this stage. You are not instructing, you are not teaching, you are not landing messages. You're in pure story mode at this stage. Then we get to the attention snap, and from there we go into the engine room. And the engine room is actually 40 to 60% of your time. And the engine room is actually where we land into the cellular memory of our audiences. This is where we give the best of us. This is where we give the things that we know will change their world. So the stories coming in 25 to 35% of your time are simply to connect. The engine room is where we give the best of us, right? And the engine room actually holds the structure for the main stage keynote, which is 5 big ideas. And within the engine room as well, if you're doing a subject matter expert presentation, then it's actually the subject matter expert structure within the engine room, which is our 3x3s, what we call the matrix. So it's 3 core themes, landing 3 key pieces of information. So with both of those, you will notice that we are actually sticking within the 7 plus or minus 2 chunks of information that we spoke about in episode 18. Now, those structures are really important because of how we actually need to land the information to be able to take our audiences on a journey, to be able to transform their world, to allow them to step into a different reality, to allow us to come into their reality. That structure is very deliberate. So I'm just going to run through it again. In a main stage or subject matter expert keynote, our pure form has stories coming in, an attention snap, then the engine room, and then a way out. Your stories coming in will be 25 to 35% of your time. The engine room will hold 40 to 60% of your time, and the engine room holds your key structures. For a main stage keynote, that will be 5 big ideas. For a subject matter expert, that will be our 3x3 matrix. So that is our structure for a keynote. We then have 3 structures from TED Talks. And can I just also clarify while I've got you that these structures are for speaking and not for pitching. There is a totally different structure for pitching, and I'm very happy to run you through that in a future conversation. So these are just around speaking, and these are our core structures. So outside of our main stage and our subject matter expert keynote, we go to 3 structures that we draw on from TED Talks. The TED Talk structure is the first. This is the traditional TED Talk structure that created the power that we spoke about earlier. The power of the TED Talk is in how it's created and how it is actually structured. And the TED Talk opens with one bold idea that you believe could change the world or change a result or change an outcome. So it's one bold idea. It opens with one bold idea. It is then, that one bold idea is then supported through 5 to 7 key chunks of information. Now, those key chunks of information, they could be research, data, micro stories, explanations, scenarios. It could be perspectives, questions to ask, but it's 5 to 7, ideally 5, key chunks of information that support that one bold idea. So they have to support that one bold idea or else they don't actually belong. So one bold idea, 5 to 7 key chunks of information. And then the TED Talk closes by looping back to a view of the world that is possible if that one bold idea were true. And this is the power and the beauty in a TED Talk. It's a really great structure to use, not just for the TED stage, but if you're actually wanting to get people to think a little bit differently about something. Okay, so that's the TED Talk, a bold idea supported well through 5 to 7 chunks of information in support of that bold idea that closes with a view of the world that was possible if that bold idea were true. That's the pure form TED Talk. The other things that we get from the TED Talk, one is the Wonder Walk. And the Wonder Walk is quite simply moments of wow, remembering that these all are on a through line. So moments of wow. The best way to describe these is when a National Geographic photographer or someone like that speaks on a TED stage, and you will see this incredible visual go up, and it will be this phenomenal photo that they've managed to get. And with that photo, whilst you're absorbing the brilliance of it and you're feeling into it, they will walk you through why they wanted that photo, what the choices were that they had to make to get it, the process to be in place to get it. They will talk you through all the things. They will talk you through the challenges. They'll talk you through the delight. They will talk you through the celebration, and they will talk you through that. And then they'll move to another one, and then they'll move to another one. And then they'll move to another one. And the whole time we're captivated simply through these moments of wow, right? So that is the wonder walk. And we've seen people in our world use that in so many different ways. It's one of the really powerful things to do. The important thing to remember, though, is that the wonder walk in that structure is not useful for anything that's more than 15 to 21, 22 minutes, because too many moments of wow without contrast and conflict, our actual as humans, we tap out. We actually need, after a certain period of time, we need some sort of conflict or some sort of contrast or some sort of, I guess, grittiness to stay involved. So the moments of wow are really powerful, but they need to pull up at between that 15 and 21 to 22 mark. But they are nonetheless incredibly powerful if what you do is highly visual, or you want to use highly visual representation to get people to consider something different. Then the last one that we use is our 5 key structures for speaking only. And as I said, key structures, not all structures, for speaking only, not necessarily for pitching or some of the other presentations that we need to do, is the crescendo. Now, to stereotype, which is something I very rarely do, the crescendo is a structure that seems to be almost innate amongst Black African American men who are motivational in nature, particularly preachers, particularly movement accelerators, particularly in that personal and professional development space. This seems to be something that is innate to them. And what the crescendo is it's 7 to 9 chunks of information again, but it starts off with something that's almost conversational. It's almost like every day. It's low paced, it's casual, it's got a softer tone, but every single chunk builds on the one before it, and they get bigger and bolder in intensity, in vibrancy, in tone. They get faster in pace until we get to the end, and it literally feels like a call to arms. It literally feels like we are being called out of our seats to go and do something. It is a powerful, powerful way of speaking. And it can actually run for anything from a 3-minute speech, 90 seconds, a 3-minute speaking spot, right through to 40 minutes, 30 to 40 minutes, much longer than that, and the audience hasn't had time to breathe. I would actually personally tap these out at about 30 minutes because you need your audience to have time to breathe. And the thing with crescendo is it builds and builds and builds and builds. So powerful preachers, powerful politicians, powerful movement accelerators, right? These are all people who actually speak into the crescendo style of speaking. It is incredibly powerful if you are somebody put on this planet to create a movement, to change the way that we think, when you want people to literally step in beside you and come with you. I delivered a crescendo style speech once. This is back about 2016, and it went on YouTube. It's no longer up there, so don't go looking for it. It went on YouTube, and in 2016, which is 7 years ago now, it actually generated 48,000 views in the first 24 hours that it was up. Now, in that day and age, that was quite prolific. And what it was, the secret to it was that it was the crescendo structure. So when you want to really break through fast and your whole mission in life is very movement orientated, then I suggest that you get up close and familiar with the crescendo structure. Now, do we stick strictly to these structures? That's a little bit of a tongue twister. Do we stick strictly to these structures? Well, yes and no. We do stick to these structures strictly while we're building our muscle, because it means that we can actually deliberately move people while we're still building all the elements of the craft. But once we've got the muscle built, we then actually can move away from that. This is why they're actually frameworks rather than structures. I've been calling them structures all the way through, but the truth is that they're actually frameworks. And what that means, structure, is you have to follow A plus B equals C plus D equals E plus F equals G plus H equals structure, speech done. A framework is we loosely follow it to make sure that we're still moving people deliberately, but we bring in what it is that we need to best showcase the way that we show up. We spoke earlier in this series of conversations about archetypes and who we are. That all kind of dictates how we should be showing up. You need to know the rules to break them, though. And this is one of the things I want you to understand, is that the reason we teach our people in our communities the rules of the game, so to speak, is because if you want to bend and break the rules, first you have to know them, right? My work as an industrial relations negotiator, I wasn't the most experienced industrial relations negotiator on the planet, but I did understand how to learn the rules of the game. And Albert Einstein has a quote that I just about live by, and I've known it since before the internet became prolific. So I think it is actually his quote, just not misappropriated. But he has a quote that says, first, you have to learn the rules of the game, and then you have to play them better than anybody else, right? Now, the best players in any industry, in any sport, in any speaking game, the best players are those that take the rules and bend and break them to bring us brilliance. But the secret is first you have to know the rules so that you know which ones to bend and to break. And this is why we start with structure. We start with understanding how we do deliberately move people from where they are now to where we want them to be, to where they never expected to be, so that we can bring every part of our brilliance to the stage on top of those structures when we move them to frameworks.